Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to show you guys my September wrap up. This month I mostly read ebooks, so I only have 8 physical books to show you. One of them I cannot find because I rearranged my bookshelf. So I think it's on the bottom shelf here, but I'm not positive. So I'll just mention that book, but you won't be able to see the cover. But you can go on my Goodreads and see what book that was. So I'm going to start off with the first 2 books I read this month were Ebooks, which were The Bone Witch by Rin Chipuko. I don't know how you pronounce that. I rated it 5 stars. I really liked it. It was my first time reading a book in that series by that author. It's more like a fantasy, so I really liked that. That was my first book I had to read, not only for September, but for Bookish Jeopardy, so that was fun. The next one that I read that I rated 5 stars was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin. I rated that 5 stars. That is part of the Moon Goddess series, and book 2 comes out in November of this year. So I'm looking to continue that series. I really liked it. I liked learning about the Chinese culture and all that, which I think for me goes back to a few years ago when my cousins in Virginia and Pennsylvania were living in China for 4 years as missionaries, telling the Chinese about God and life and heaven and all that. So I really liked that one. The next one that I read that it was another ebook was actually that one was an audiobook, now that I remember. Forever My Girl by Heidi McLaughlin. I rated that 5 stars, and I really liked it. Plus I saw the movie a few years ago on Up TV, and I really liked it. And I remember the girl that played the main female character with blonde hair, she's actually in Hallmark movies and GAC family movies, so I was really glad that I finally got to read this book. I will be continuing that series. I have too many book series that I have started this year that I want to finish before the year is up. Now, the next one I read that's physical was The River by Beverly Lewis. This was a reread for me, which I rated 5 stars. I read this back in 2017 for the very first time, even though this book didn't come out until 2014. But I really enjoyed it. It's about the Amish, as you can see on the cover. Just about how they returned for their parents' wedding anniversary after the death of their baby sister. So it just talks about that, and it talks about how Tilly and Ruth, they left the Amish faith in their life and became an Englisher, and when they returned they weren't sure if they'd be accepted or not, but it just talks about that. So this is a standalone, so if you like Amish fiction or you like books about family and that, this one is definitely for you. Let's see, the next one I read, which was another physical book, Sometimes You Lie, or Sometimes You Have to Lie, by Leslie Brody. This is about the life and times of Louise Fitzhugh, the author of Harriet the Spy. This was a memoir. I rarely read memoirs because sometimes I don't like them, but this one I really enjoyed. I think I rated it 4.5 because the way her father treated her and her mom when she was growing up, I just didn't agree with, because my dad didn't treat me like that. So and he didn't treat my mom like that, so that's why I rated this 5 stars. I thought it could be better, but that's just me. The next one that I read, which was an ebook, was Strawberry Shortcake Murder by Joanne Fluke. That is part of the Hannah Swanson Cozy Mystery book series, and I watched the movies on Hallmark Channel a year or so ago, might have been 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed them. I remember in 2017 or 2018, I started that series. So I was really glad that I could continue with book 2. I still have to buy book 2 to add to my cozy mystery collection on my bookshelf. These aren't my cozies, and my cozies are like right here. But I really liked it. I rated 5 stars. I really liked the recipes that were mentioned in there too. So once I get that book, I'm really hoping to make those recipes and those desserts. The next one I read, which I have the physical copy of, but I just can't find it, is Sunset in Central Park by Sarah Morgan. I rated that 5 stars. I thought it was a really cute romance. It reminded me a little bit of a small town summer spring movie, like on Hallmark Channel or Up TV or GAC Family. So I'm really hoping to continue that series. I did read one Sarah Morgan book before this one. I think it was a Christmas book. I really enjoyed it. So this author is a win for me because I really like her books. The next one that I read was The Princess by Laurie Wick. I rated this 5 stars. This book actually had been on my to-read list for several years because it originally came out when I was like 8 years old. So I've always wanted to read this one. I found it at Ollie's, as you can see. So it's only like $4, which I thought was really good. And I really enjoyed this. This one, it reminded me a lot of the royal family now today, especially with Queen Elizabeth's death recently, like I think it was last week. I really enjoyed this one. It made me understand the royals a little bit more, even though this was a fiction book, but still. If you like Laurie Wick books, which I do, I have several on my bookshelf because my grandma used to read them a lot when I would stay weekends with her and that. So that's an author that's very special to my heart. The next one I read, which my mom's cousin in Randolph, New York, in Amish country, loaned this to me back in November after I lost my dad. It's Sacagawea by Anna Lee Waldo. As you can see, it's a really thick book. This one took me almost a week to read. It's like 400 pages, over 1,400 pages. So I really like this one. I learned a lot from this one, like when bad things happen to you, trying to look at the positive side of stuff. So, but I really like that one. I rated it 5 stars. Next one I read, which was part of the traveling book tour that I was on. You guys probably saw my post on Facebook and Instagram about that. But I read this one. It's a novella, Yours and Mine, which is by A.E. Bennett. This was my first time reading any of her books. I really enjoyed it. And she signed it for me. And she sent me a little card with it, as well as her own personal card. I really enjoyed this one. It was a cute, short Regency romance book. It was only like 8 chapters, I think it was. Yeah, it's only 8 chapters. This is actually really cute. This is more of an adult book because there is some intimate moments mentioned in this book, so I do not recommend a teenager or a late teen reading this. I do suggest that you are over the age of 21 before you read this because of that. But this one reminded me a lot of Star-Crossed Lovers, like kind of romance where the family forbids one of them to date the other family member's loved one or whatever. But this one was really good. I do want to read the rest in this series. In fact, book 3 for this series comes out very soon, but I'm hoping I can acquire book 1 after this one from the author. I still have to talk to her about that, but I'll have to see how that goes. The next one that I read was an ebook Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This was another one I had to read for Bookish Jeopardy and for the fantasy readathon that I did this month. I kept putting Game of Thrones off because it didn't interest me or anything, but I did start reading it and I did like it. The ending I thought could have been a little better, but that was just me. But I did rate it, I think, 4.5 stars on Goodreads. I will explore more in that series, but I just hope that the other books are a lot better and not as long. The next one that I read, which was another ebook, was The Shanghai Girls by Lisa C. This was another Chinese Asian book series that I decided to explore. I also had to read it for Bookish Jeopardy, and I really liked it. I rated it 5 stars. I found it very interesting. I didn't care for the arranged marriage part of that book, but I realized back in the 1930s and 40s, that's how life was for some countries and for some cultures and families. So aside from that, I really enjoyed that book. The next one I read, which I have a physical of, was Beneath the Bending Skies by Jane Kirkpatrick. This one I really liked because it was about an Indian reservation, and I just love the history that was explained about that. And I also love that this was set in the 1800s Montana. I've never been to Montana, but when my dad was in his 20s, he went on a road trip thing out west with his brother, his best friend, and then a childhood friend. That was in the late 70s, early 80s, and I remember him talking about that, and he really enjoyed that, but he said that was a once-in-a-lifetime trip he would take, because he said it's just so flat out there. And I remember him talking about buffaloes walking across the road when they were trying to go down the road. So, but this one I really enjoyed. It was actually based on a true story, so if you have a chance to check out Jane Kirkpatrick's books, please do. She is one of my favorite historical fiction authors, and all of her books I've always been so pleased with. Okay, the next one that I read was Where the Road Bends by Rachel Fordman. This is the third book I've read by Rachel, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. This was set in the 1880s Iowa. Just about this woman that she travels across, she lost her parents, and then she's supposed to get married, but then this man gets injured on her property and becomes homeless and penniless, and so she tries to help him out. And then she discovers the man she's supposed to marry is very abusive, and so she decides to break up with him and ends up marrying this man that was recovering on her property. So it's a really cute historical romance. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to read more by Rachel in the future. The next one that I read, which was an ebook, was Wild by Cheryl Strayed. This one I've been wanting to read for so long, because it was mentioned on Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life show back in 2016 when Lorelai did the whole trip thing. She went camping on her own to find herself after Richard Gilmore passed away, and she wasn't getting along with her mom that well. And her daughter Rory was living in New York City as a journalist and all that. So ever since I watched that episode of Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life, I always wanted to read the book The Wild. So I read it. I absolutely loved it. I connected with it. I liked how the author said that she lost a parent, so I connected with that because I just lost my dad 10 months ago. So I really liked it. I rated it 5 stars. I cannot wait to read more by Cheryl in the future. I don't really get why people rated it low on Goodreads, because I didn't think it was that bad, but that's my own opinion. The next one that I read, which was an ebook, was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I rated that 5 stars. I absolutely love that one. That was another big hit fantasy series that I started, and I'm hoping to finish this year. So, the next one I read, well actually the next 3 that I read, the next 4 that I read, that ended the month were The Master Craftsman by Kelly Stewart. This was the first time I read this one. I really enjoyed it. It was set in 1917 Russia, and I also went to the 2022 present day. Talked about finding a Russian egg and all that. I found it absolutely fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading more by Kelly in the future. This was my first time reading a book by her, but I'm so glad that it was such a big hit. Next one I read, which was Plain Pursuit by Beth Wiseman. This book and series was sent to me last year by my book club friend Amanda Herrera. I think that's how I pronounce her last name. I'm not totally sure. So Amanda, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry if I butchered your last name. I did not mean to do that. But I really liked this one. This one had a little bit of a sad story in it, but overall I absolutely loved it. And I can't wait to explore more in this series in the coming months. Next one I read, which was for Final Jeopardy, was The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. This one I was questionable about when I started it because it started off really slow and I started to hate it. But I kept going because my team needed the points for Final Jeopardy, and I ended up loving this one. I ended up rating it 5 stars, even though it was mainly a horror book, which I'm not a big horror book read person. I'm more of horror movies, but I really like this one and I will explore that series more. I just hope that all the books in that series aren't over 1,000 pages like The Witching Hour was. And the last book I read this month, which was Jinxed by Higgins. This was book 6 in the Reagan Riley mystery series. I started this series a few years ago. My grandparents, my dad's parents, actually got me hooked on Higgins books. They gave me one for Christmas when I was 12 years old. So this book series and this author is very special to me. I ended up loving this one. It was actually about a murder that happened on the set of a TV show that was being filmed. So that was really interesting. That's all my books for this month. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. If there's any books here that you see that you've read or you think you might want to read, let me know in the comments below. I love to hear from you guys, and I love to know what you think about my videos or what you think about the books that I read and all that. So that's it for now. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!